Hello friends, welcome to Concepts of Geology, the Crystallography series. We have till now completed 6 classes on the series, and today on the 7th class we will going to learn about the non-primitive unit cells. Okay. Now before diving into the main topic for today, I need a recap session for the last class. On the last class we have discussed about the 7 crystal systems. Crystal system means a group of crystals those possess unit cells having a common shape. Okay, for example, suppose a cube or a hexagon. We saw there were only 7 shapes possible in 3 dimensions, and accordingly we have 7 crystal systems. Okay, now remember, whatever the shapes we have discussed till now, we have motive points on the corners only. For example, suppose in orthorhombic unit cell we choose a cuboid, okay, with 8 motive points lying on the 8 corners, just like this one. Now when we think of the larger picture, each corner motif was shared by 8 neighboring cuboids, and each cuboid possesses 1/8 of the motif. Okay, so in cumulative a single cell has one complete motif. So these are called primitive unit cell. And on the other hand, when the unit cell is having more than one lattice point or motif in cumulative, then it will be called as a non-primitive unit cell. Okay, but obviously whatever the unit cell is, primitive or non-primitive, the shape of the cell will be one of the 7 basic shapes, and accordingly the crystal will be grouped into one of the 7 crystal systems. So up to this all agreed, but the problem is, why do we need to choose a non-primitive unit cell? I mean, we had primitive unit cells and all things were running smooth. Then what is the context of non-primitive unit cells? Remember, during the class where we discussed about the choice of unit cell, we learned about the unit cells where it was told that the unit cell should be reduced. That means normally it should be primitive. Now in the most of the cases when we are choosing a non-primitive unit cell, we may have a primitive choice also, but we are ignoring that. Rather we are choosing a non-primitive unit cell here. So the very obvious question is laying here, that why to do so? This is done to express the symmetry of the lattice more prominently or more easily. Let me explain that. Think of this lattice. Okay, this is a square lattice and possesses a 4-fold rotational symmetry. Suppose this is the lattice of sodium chloride, and the motifs here are sodium atoms and chlorine atoms. So the arrangement becomes like this. The symmetry of the lattice is diagonal mirror planes and a 4-fold rotational symmetry. Okay, now observe, we may have 2 choices of unit cells here. One is primitive, this one, and one is non-primitive, this one. Okay, in primitive unit cell we have one complete motif in cumulative, that means one sodium atom and one chlorine atom. Okay, and here we have 2 motifs in cumulative. There are 1/4 of these open circles in these corners. Okay, so cumulatively this will be 1, and on the center we have 1 open circle. So in cumulative we have 2 open circles, and similarly we have half of these black dots in these arms of the square. So in total we have 4 halves, that means 2 black dots in addition. So that means 2 sodium atoms and 2 chlorine atoms in total. Okay, so clearly the reduced unit cell is this one, but the right choice for unit cell is this non-primitive one. Why? Because this is possessing the exact symmetry like this larger lattice. Okay, clearly observe, here we have the diagonal mirror plane and the 4-fold rotational symmetry on the center of this unit cell. So that's why instead of being a complicated choice, this is the most prominent choice for the unit cell, the non-primitive one. Okay, similarly let's take one more example. Observe this lattice. Okay, here each lattice point has a 60-degree offset from its neighbor. Okay, so the symmetry here is a hexagonal rotational symmetry. Again here we may have 2 type of choices. This is primitive unit cell and this is non-primitive unit cell. Very clearly this primitive cell, which is a rhombohedron, this is not conveying prominently the symmetry of the total lattice. Okay, but when we are talking about this hexagonal pattern, this is clearly and prominently showing the hexagonal symmetry of the basic hexagonal lattice. Okay, so this is a complicated choice, no doubt, but this is a more prominent choice for the unit cell. Able to understand that this hexagonal unit cell is actually three collective choice of this rhombohedron pattern. So this is primitive one and this is non-primitive one, and this non-primitive unit cell is the most prominent choice for the unit cell of this lattice. So now we have got the answer of the first question, that why do we choose non-primitive unit cells? This is because to express the symmetry of the lattice in a more prominent or more easy way. I think this is clear now. Okay, so we have understood what are non-primitive cells and why do they exist. So the next problem is, what are the types of unit cell in 3 dimensions? Till now, whatever we have seen, the 7 basic shapes in 3 dimensions, they were all primitive cells and they are designated by the symbol capital P. Okay, this P is for primitive. For example, suppose in this case of orthorhombic primitive unit cell, this is symbolized as 222P. Okay, why 222? That will be discussed later, but for now understand this is for expressing the characteristic symmetry of the unit cell. Remember, in case of orthorhombic unit cell, we have 3 perpendicular 2-fold rotational axes and these are shown as 2, 2, 2. Okay, and the P is for primitive. This space lattice is produced by stacking of orthonoid vertically. Okay, so that means exactly one above another. Now one thing is very notable here, that this type of vertical arrangement preserves the maximum symmetry of the base lattice. When we are stacking vertically, we are preserving all the symmetries present in this base lattice. Okay, so this is called a primitive lattice and symbolized as capital P. Now what other orthorhombic cells are possible? Suppose we take orthonoids and stacking them as the distance between adjacent layers is half of the length of any one transition vector. Okay, so each layer is offset from one above and below it. Okay, look, the lattice point is first moving here, and then it is uplifted here. Okay, so this is the pattern how we are stacking. Each layer is offset from one above and below it. Okay, the lattice point in the first, third and fifth and so on layers will be directly above each other. Note here, this is the first lattice, this is the second stacking, and this is the third stacking. And on the third stacking, the lattice point is directly vertically above the first lattice point. This will happen again in the case of the fifth stacking, seventh stacking, ninth stacking, okay, and so on. This stacking pattern is also creating a orthorhombic cell. Why orthorhombic? Because here also we have 3 mutually perpendicular 2-fold rotational axes. Okay, so this is also an orthorhombic unit cell, but this is doubly primitive cell having an extra lattice point at the center of this cell. Okay, so we call them body centered cell and symbolized as capital I. Okay, this is called a body centered unit cell and the symbol is read out as 222I. 2 more types of orthorhombic cells can be produced, but for that we need the diamond net. Suppose we can stack diamond lattices to produce an orthorhombic unit cell with an extra lattice point in the 2 opposite faces like that. Okay, here we have 2 complete lattice points on the opposite face of this unit cell. This resulted unit cell is called an end-centered unit cell. Okay, this is also again a non-primitive unit cell and this is symbolized as the letter capital A, capital B or capital C. Okay, this lattice depending on the location of the extra lattice point compared with the crystallographic axis. Okay, in this figure, suppose the C crystallographic axis is vertical always here and the extra lattice points are laying on this C crystallographic axis. So that's why it is symbolized as the capital C. Okay, so this will be read out like 222C. Okay, this is called end-centered cell. Again, alternatively, we may stack the diamond lattices to produce a unit cell with an extra point in the center of each face like this one. Okay, in this unit cell, this is again an orthorhombic cell. Why? Because this is possessing three mutually perpendicular two-fold rotational axis, and look here, we have extra lattice points on each faces on the center. This is called a face-centered unit cell and designated as the letter capital F. Okay, so this will be read out as 222F. Fine, this is a face-centered unit cell. Now look at the beauty of crystallography here. We are taking here diamond net as the basic lattice, but we are creating orthorhombic cell. So this is very noteworthy here. We may have taken whatever base lattice, suppose diamond net or orthonet or whatever, or we may have chosen the stacking pattern vertical or inclined, or the resulted unit cell is becoming primitive or non-primitive. The resulted unit cell shape is belonging to one of the 7 basic shapes, and accordingly they are grouped into one of the 7 basic crystallographic systems. So now we have classified the non-primitive unit cells into 3 groups. The first one is the body centered, okay, this one, and this is symbolized as capital I. The second one is the N centered, okay, and they are named as capital A, B or C accordingly the positions of the extra lattice points. And the next one or the last one is the face centered, where the extra lattice points are laying in the center of each and every faces. Okay, so this was all about the non-primitive unit cells. Why do we choose them and what are their types? What you have to do is you have to print these sentences in your mind. Okay, keep these sentences like a thumb rule in your mind. Okay, we will meet on the next class again with a new topic on the series of crystallography. Okay, till then, goodbye.